Nice. Okay, good stuff.
Album time.
Yeah.
All right. Therapy.
Therapy.
Or therapy? You know,
What was the choice behind adding the question mark?
Yes,
I
don't know. I don't even remember how this album came onto my purview. I think it might have been on one of those like underappreciated albums of the 90s charts or somebody's top 100 in there, but that is how they ended up.
Yeah, so
on the charts.
So some stats. Therapy's Troublegum is the album. It's #1 on Best Ever Albums. It was 57 in 1994. It is 426 in the 90s, and Therapy is ranked 2,391 in the overall artist rankings.
Yeah, and just a very quick overview of them. They're a Northern Irish rock band formed in 1989. They have released 14 full-length studio albums, ranging from their first album in 1991, Baby Teeth, to their final album, at least as of now, from 2023, Hard Cold Fire would be where they're there. And then in terms of when we look at influences, they don't necessarily have bands, but they said that some of the covers they've done, to give you an idea, are Iron Man by Black Sabbath, Invisible Sun by The Police, Vicar in a Tutu by The Smiths were there, and their lead songwriter says that Juju by Susie and the Banshees is his favorite album, and his second favorite album is Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band's Trout Mask Replica, and lists as some of the influences for bands that he loved listening to: Sonic Youth, the Jesus Lizard, Husker Du. Two of the three of them we've covered, Sonic Youth and Husker Du. Big Black, who we didn't cover, but I've been trying to find a way to get songs about fucking on to the list for forever, but they come up. Killing Joke, who we...
I was going to say Courtney Love mentioned Big Black when we covered Hole in one of her quotes. Yeah.
So we'll get it on eventually. And Killing Joke and Helmet also are there. Cool. And often their songs and artwork reference one of my favorite novelists, Samuel Beckett.
Oh, nice.
As well. So that's a little overview of them.
Minor correction. They are ranked 1,393 in overall artist rankings. I was looking at the wrong number just on Best Ever Albums, so I just wanted to correct that.
So you may be asking, Josh, why the question mark suffix, which you mentioned right here? I have an answer for you.
Oh, good.
This starts off, much has been made over the years of the unusual question mark suffix in the band's name, including by my co-host right here, Josh. In early interviews, the band said that the name was, quote, really deep, unquote, and intended to raise the question, do you need therapy? But in a 1992 interview, guitarist Andy Carnes admitted that it was a chance design when he was working on the band's first record sleeve. Okay. Working with Letraset Transfers, Carnes, probably Carnes would be my guess, Cairns, misaligned the band's name and used the question mark icon to fill the space to the right to make it even. And then we thought, well, maybe we can bluff our way through when people start reading into it. That reminds me of the umlaut that was in Motley Crue's name, right? That stood for absolutely nothing. So there you go, Josh. I have all answers today.
So it was just a happy accident, really.
Just a graphic design choice, I would say. Mm-hmm. So what did you think of Therapy? We wouldn't even say with question mark, I guess, anymore. Therapy and a question mark.
Yeah, this was actually a pretty good album. I really liked it. It's got this kind of hard rock sound to it, but it also sprinkles in elements of punk rock and skate punk, and there's some metal in here as well. Some of the riffs on here are definitely metal on a song like Unbeliever. And I found that it was pretty melodic at times. It kept my attention. There was, I think there's strong lyrics on this, or at least interesting lyrics. There's a lot of references to Jesus and spirituality. I mean, it must be intentional. Did you pick up on that as well?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they're just trying to go for kind of generic, like, metal motifs or themes, because heaven and hell and Jesus and all of that stuff is kind of in that area of interest, I feel like, on a lot of albums, or maybe there's some sort of like subtext to that, but it came up, I felt like it came up pretty frequently, enough for me to write it down. I thought there was a lot of tongue-in-cheek, or at least comedic types of lines as well. There's there's an opening line for Femtex is "Masturbation saved my life," which I thought was hilarious. There's a Joy Division cover. Speaking of covers, "Isolation," I thought that was pretty good. And I really liked the song "Lunacy Booth," where they bring a female singer in, speaking of religious references, and she kind of like sings the chorus, and that really kind of changed the band up to that point on the album, and really was kind of unique. And she kind of sounds, because she's Northern Irish, she kind of sounded like Sinead O'Connor, even though it wasn't. It's a different woman. Actually, I should probably name check her, but I really like that song. And I don't know, I just kind of like the versatility of this band, and the riffs and the music, and overall I thought it was a pleasant surprise. I thought maybe you like, I know you said you didn't necessarily like pick this band out of intentionally, or wasn't on kind of the big list, but I thought maybe you like knew this band as a hidden gem on some level yourself. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty good, like, interesting hard rock album, and so yeah, this is a thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I think you were higher on this one than I was, Josh. I was not a super big fan of this album. Okay. It wasn't as heavy as they mentioned Helmet, and definitely that came to mind because it has a sound like Helmet does it, but it wasn't as aggressive, and the guitars weren't as crunchy. It has that real late 90s production to it, that you want to talk about something that sounds like, the metal of the late 90s and the early 2000s production wise. This very much sounds like that. It borrows a little bit from the same stylistic playbook of Tool, I'd say, as well at times. I didn't get much punk rock from this, unless we were sort of in the realm where it's like hardcore adjacent punk rock might be.
Yeah,
where
I was
they were
thinking
going
a
for
song like "Nowhere" on this. I felt like had a kind of a punk beat to it, or tempo.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's to me it's punk in the way that the harder edged songs in the post punk era. I know they mentioned Killing Joke as an influence too, and that's a pretty good corollary in terms of what this sounded like as well. But whereas Killing Joke had, the album we covered was very much of the 80s production style wise, so it was more appealing to me production wise. This felt very 90s, but especially late 90s production. It also felt like a lot of rock that came out that was nameless, faceless in the like late 90s, early 2000s. Some of which I have a soft spot for, but I like this type of sound if it's a little bit more tongue in cheek. So bands like Danko Jones or Buck Cherry and stuff like kind of do this sound, but they have a little more less serious to it. Some of the lyrics kind of were like, you mentioned, it was funny, like "Masturbation saved my life." That made me laugh as well. But there's like a lot of like very like on the nose beginnings to songs, like "I'm not afraid to die, I just going to hell," was one of them, and it's a lot of that like lyricism. There was another funny one it seems like every first bar was designed to kind of like catch your attention. Right. Some of them worked, like the one that we just mentioned. I did laugh at "With a face like this, I won't break any hearts" either was another funny first line. But each of them, like, I listened to with the idea that it was like a tone setter. But it's very like introspective, but not necessarily in the. It's both introspective but not deep, Josh, would be how I'd describe like the lyrical content of this. And so if the question is therapy ? I'd say not really in this one. So yeah, it just it didn't appeal to me. It's if I'm gonna have hard rock, I want it to be harder. If I'm gonna have like edge, I need it to be edgier. And if I want comic value, it's gonna be
better.
I want it a little more like I said before, some of the bands that
Yeah.
do this a little bit more tongue in cheek. So it's not a bad album, but after a couple listens, there's nothing about this that made me want to explore the rest of their catalog. So I'd say an average album for me.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't really feel like it was too generic, or at least comparable to kind of later 90s rock. I thought there was something different here, and the mix of metal and more rock standard. I don't know. I just felt like it mixed it up enough to keep me interested, and that's kind of why it's higher. Ultimately, I only paid attention to the lyrics so much, so it ultimately comes down to the music as usual. But I thought that worked pretty
There's
well.
a lot that sounded like Godsmack or Days of the New and stuff like that. Like a song like Lunacy Booth could just as easily be, like, I'm not the one who's so far away, like those type songs that it just had kind of like that pick a lane vibe to it that so much of late 90s rock has for me, where it's just placeholder rock a little bit would be how I describe it for myself. So like I said, it's certainly not a bad album, but it didn't really move the bar for me.
Yeah.
But respect to you for getting more out of this. I don't know if one of us is right or not. It's just how it hits the ears. Yeah.
It's never a bad thing when we differ on the albums.